Good afternoon, Advisory Design Panel. Welcome to our new members. We need to start this meeting. Oh, sorry, I should introduce myself. My name is Jessie Fletcher. I'm the manager of current planning. I believe we have two of our newly appointed panel members with us today, Carlos Avarse with UDI and Kim Smith from AIBC. Is that correct? Our first order of business before we can start the meeting is we do need to elect a new chair and co-chair. So if we have any volunteers.
I'd like to volunteer John Chapman for chair.
I'd like to nominate Carlos for vice chair.
Any opposed? Do we need a motion for that? Can you make it a motion, please, Carlos?
Sure. I'll motion for John Chapman to be the chair, and I will happily accept the co-chair nomination from Sarah Tippler if the advisory design panel agrees to that.
Okay, that sounds great. Carlos, I will hand it over to you to run the meeting as the vice chair. Thank you.
That looks like John's missing today. So thank you, Jesse. Welcome everyone to Advisory Design Panel. My name is Carlos Avarse. Just wanted to start by recognizing we're on the traditional territory of Squamish Nation. Agenda item 2, appointment of chair, seems to be complete. And so item 3 is adoption of the agenda. Would anyone like to move to adopt today's agenda? Sarah? Anyone want to second that? Okay, perfect. So that is adopted. Minutes from last meeting, September 19th. Are there any comments to those minutes to share with the group? No, there's only 4 of us, so. Oh, Suni's on? Okay, perfect. So can anyone move to adopt those? Thanks again, Sarah. Seconded. Anyone? Perfect. Yep. Okay, we're good. So with that, we're on to business. And so Bryan, Daly, planner, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My name is Bryan Daly. I'm planner here at the district. First up today, we have a development permit application, DP 621 at 1005 and 1009 Raven Drive. It is a development permit application to establish the form and character of 35 townhomes. The proposed development is subject to Development Permit Area 3 Universal Guidelines. It was a development that was contemplated during a recent rezoning application, which rezoned the property from RL1 to Comprehensive Development Zone 103. The application largely meets everything in this CD 103 zone, with the exception of the front setback, where a minor variance is requested for the upper 2 stories to project into the front setback. The project has not previously been presented to ADP. Staff have requested that the architect use more colors on the exterior finishes, suggesting the use of a different color for each block of townhomes. The architect has requested that the project be presented to ADP as currently designed for feedback. So staff are specifically requesting ADP's recommendations on building form and character and landscaping as it pertains to the DPA 3 guidelines. With that, I will pass it over to the proponent to make their presentation.
Thanks, Bryan, for the introduction. My name is Thomas Grimwood with Grimwood Architecture. So just to kind of give you some context, this is the site here. We've kind of color coded the key constraints. So As you can see, we're landlocked on 3 sides. So we have limited frontage here along Raven Drive. The primary constraint, I would say, is that we've got these high voltage power lines running in this angled line across the site here. And we are in floodplain. We have an environmentally sensitive area to the north, the tributary to Finch Creek. And we have also another environmentally sensitive area to the west. So the response to these constraints is, you can see the buildable area of the site along the west here. So really the concept was trying to utilize as much of that area as possible for the built form for housing, and maximize the amount of open space to the east. So we've organized the buildings into we've organized the units into 4 buildings. 2 smaller buildings along Raven Drive that we kind of break down the massing and sort of tie into the adjacent single-family houses to the west. And then we've got 2 larger buildings that really try and accommodate as much housing as we can into that corner of the site. So the area to the east has been secured as an urban farm. So the land is designated as community farm and will be donated back to the District of Squamish. I think we have someone that is going to speak a little bit more about this area and how it's going to be utilized in the future. So it'll be overseen and managed by Squamish Can, but it'll include features like shared gardens, seating areas, educational components, and has a land value of over $1 million. So just in terms of like form and character, we're trying to find a building form and style that's compatible with the agri-hood context. So really kind of simple rectilinear building forms, gable roof forms with deep overhangs to provide generous weather protection. So vertical board and batten siding, and large black window frames, symmetrical window arrangement to provide as much natural daylight as we can. We're including a lot of like architectural accents, like the roof vents, the sort of agricultural style fencing, gooseneck lighting, things like that. I'm not getting carried away with it, just sort of loosely recalling this kind of modern farmhouse style so that it is sympathetic to the adjacent context of agri-hood. This is a view along Raven Drive approaching to the east. So you can see an existing single family home here on the right of the screen, showing the transition from single family to townhouse building forms. So we've got the gable form that relate to a lot of the form that you see in the neighborhood. A view from the entry to the project here. So kind of simple form, without being too literal in our interpretation of a modern farmhouse. A view into the courtyard here. You can see the building to the left is the units are oriented to the east, so they front onto the agricultural area. So unit entrances, pathways. So we're trying not to turn our back to that. So there's kind of a connection there between the housing portion and the agricultural area. This is a view from, I guess, the agricultural area back into the project here. And yeah, just further to the conversation about color, we like the white palette, more of a reduced material palette. It lightens up the scheme, under a gray Squamish sky. And we like the kind of accent colors used at the entry doors. And we think it really just complements the colors of the surrounding agricultural area, I guess. So just an example of some of the typical unit types. So we've adopted the interlocked unit, which gives us just a really efficient, functional, family-oriented townhouse with 3 bedrooms, living space off of the main level kitchen, living, dining. And then we've got a flex space at the grade level. So we've worked with our civil engineer and our geotechnical engineer to kind of manipulate the ground plane so we can have some living space down there to provide additional flexibility for families, whether it's used as a bedroom or a work from home arrangement. So this is just kind of like your typical grade level plan here with the garage and the flex space. Kitchen, living, dining, nice and open, lots of daylight, and the outdoor space off of the kitchen area. And again, sort of the 3-bedroom concept, pretty well consistent. We do have another couple of unit types, but this is primarily what you're seeing. Typical elevation. So this would be the building on Raven Drive. So you can see the 3-story gable form with cupola, weather vane, lots of windows, lots of daylight, and then an active ground plane with unit entrances, addresses, colored doors, and pathway connection to the sidewalk. And this would be the rear side of this, facing the kind of the internal lane. So garage door and the kind of balcony on the 2nd level there. And to kind of a typical side elevation, we didn't really get carried away with too much ornamentation and articulation. We kept the building forms fairly simple, and you know, trying to kind of keep in mind the connection to the agricultural area to the east. It's also, you know, we're step code 3, so all of these, all of the simplicity and form is helping us in other areas of the project as well. With that, I guess I'll just pass it over to our landscape architect.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm Dylan Chernoff with Durante Crew. We're the landscape architects on the project, and it's an exciting project. The landscape at Ravenstone will contribute to the form and character of Loggers East neighborhood while interfacing with the rural edge of Squamish. The buildings will be set back from the road and buffered along the frontage. The landscape entry will create a sense of arrival, pick up on the rural character of the site. A stand of salix or willows will anchor the mobile pollinator meadow and guide the public through the community amenities of the site. Along the north-south hydro right-of-way, hydroseed mixes have been selected to support habitat and forage resource for pollinators, while salix bands will help transpire the groundwater from the former riverbed. Next slide, please. The high contrast landmark planting against the bright architecture celebrates the rural multifamily form and character of Ravenstone. Private outdoor spaces will be associated with each unit with a mix of ground level patios, decks, and storage spaces. Inside the development, the roadway is intended to become a shared spillout space and backyard for the homes. Low profile planting will offer view lines for the families to play and connect safely in the shared spaces between the townhome blocks. Next slide, please. At the entry, a pocket park and adjacent trail connection will create a gathering space and offer play for a range of age groups. Covered accessible picnic tables will activate the space and provide shelter from the rain and on the hottest, sunniest days. A playful climbing berm will provide views across the agricultural dedication and dry pond to the south, teaching kids of all ages the importance of local food production and stormwater management. Next slide, please. In a nod to the former route of the Montcalm River, a frame of fire-safe river birches is intended to catch the summer offshore winds so that the fluttering leaves can create a sound reminiscent of the flowing river. Site lighting and clear sight lines will enhance the septed using low planting and raised tree canopies where required to minimize conflicts. The bird and pollinator friendly design is intended to extend the support of the planted environment to the non-human residents of the site, supporting a resilient biodiverse ecology. Robust vegetation will offer climate resilience and reduce maintenance once it's established. I'll now return it back to Thomas to conclude the presentation. I look forward to your comments.
I think that's all we have. Yeah, thank you.
I don't have anything to add, so I'll pass it over to the panel.
Okay, great. So we'll be doing questions first. And how about we start? I just put a random list together with Sarah.
Sure. I just have a few questions here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you. Yeah,
Okay, sorry. In some of the buildings, I can't see the block right now. It's difficult. I'm just on an iPad. There's both a rear entry and a front entry. Have you considered having those doors the same color as the front entrance?
Yeah, no, I think so. What we have is that the doors that are facing the public side there's a palette of 3 colors that we've kind of drawn from like heritage kind of agricultural references. And then the doors that are facing the like the west side of or they're basically the private rear yards. I think we're showing those as gray, but yeah, they could certainly all be colored. So that's a good idea.
Have you also considered pocket doors in the A units for the washrooms that are on the ground level? Would they accommodate a pocket door?
I think they probably could, and I think that's also another really good suggestion, just in terms of being creative with the use of space, because it is pretty tight down there.
And then if a visitor is coming to visit and they're not parking in the visitor parking, but instead in the driveway, are there keypads that are going to be on the garage, or how are they supposed to enter through the garage entrance if they're not on the main entrance side?
I don't think we've gotten to that level of detail in terms of like access, but yeah, they would be coming through the garage.
Okay.
Or walking around to the front.
And then the final question is just about snow dump. Are you just planning on clearing all of the snow onto sort of the dead ends of by the agricultural site?
I don't think we have a snow removal plan in place yet, but yeah, I would think they'd push everything towards the hammerhead turnaround in the agricultural area for pickup. So the road and the turning radius have been designed to accommodate both fire and waste recycling trucks to come in. So I think it would just sort of follow the same path of travel.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Beth.
I actually don't have any questions. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sunny. Did we lose Sunny? Maybe.
Oh, I actually don't have any questions.
Okay, great. And Kim.
I've got a few questions. Can you point out on the site plan where the power lines are? I couldn't see it on it.
Sorry, the screen we're looking at now, you can see the angled blue lines. There's kind of
Maybe a couple back, just through cursor. Yeah.
So what's shown here, this is basically a right of way. We're not actually showing the individual power lines, but there's 2 kind of angled, it's this dimension right here from kind of in the middle part of the screen that's kind of falls at an angled portion across the length of the site. I don't know if that's clear at all.
Nope.
Let me the landscape might show it. I think there's if we look at this drawing here. trying to zoom in. Sorry. I'm just trying to zoom in on this one slide so you can see more clearly.
The high voltage line or further.
Yeah, I'll find a slide here, but the actual high voltage lines are further away from the buildings than what it looks like in the drawings. What we're seeing in the drawings is basically a right of way. So the lines would happen within that. There.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where the right of way was. If you go maybe back to the site plan and just run your little pointer over it, would that work?
Okay, so you can see okay, so this would be the right of way right here.
Okay.
These two angled lines there, and the hydro lines would be sort of within that, but not right up next to the buildings. It's just kind of an allocated space.
But they're existing?
They are, yes.
So, but you just haven't shown them on your plan?
Correct. Yeah, we're showing what's kind of conventional is just to show the right of way.
Okay.
Yeah, they would in
Then the other question I had is, what's the distance, the minimum distance you have between building faces of the different building blocks?
I believe that the tightest area at the bottom is around 32 feet.
Okay. And I guess you talked a lot about working with the context of the adjacent buildings, I think, the rural buildings, but I didn't see any images of them. I guess that's not required to show context. Is that right? Or those little pictures are context. Is that right?
These pictures here represent a kind of a visual for how this kind of this urban farm will get sort of programmed and built out. There's actually no structures there. It's more just the context of a community farm that we're kind of
Well,
referencing.
no, you were talking about the context. I thought about rural buildings, the rural buildings, and that's where you got the form and character of your buildings, but I didn't see any of the rural buildings you were relating to.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we don't have any references of that in our presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say board and batten, is that hardy board or is that wood?
That's hardy.
Hardy, okay. And just a minor thing, but on your plans, where is the laundry facilities in those units? Like I see 3.5 bathrooms, but no laundry facilities, but maybe I missed it.
Let's see here. Top floor, right here in this closet here. So it'd be a stacked unit on the third floor.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure, fine. Yeah. And just a question, I get it from the way you've presented it that you really like the all white building blocks. But you have recessed a little bit at the entranceways, which is nice. There's a little bit of relief to the form, and I was wondering if you would consider giving the base a bit more depth with some color, like changing the color on the base of the base part, because you are stepping back with the next 2 floors. So it seems to me you could add some color there that would give it more, break up the mass in a better way. So that's not really a question though, sorry.
And we appreciate the feedback. Yeah. So there is a natural break there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so it's an opportunity to do that if you consider it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was all my questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, we will have opportunity to comment on the next round here. Okay, I guess that's me. So yeah, I had kind of a similar question, just if you had pulled any Squamish specific agricultural history part of the
We
project?
we did. I believe those precedent images are in the DP drawing set. We just didn't put them in the presentation here. So we weren't really referencing specific examples. It was more just kind of the idea of a building form you'd see in a rural situation where it's more of a simple form, gable form. So we weren't really getting too specific with those references.
Okay. And then do you have any concerns just around white as a color in our climate, and maybe like how you might address that?
You know, the subject of white was discussed with our team like quite extensively, and so yes, we were concerned about weathering and ongoing maintenance, and so I think the way it's deployed on this project is we have a generous 2-foot overhang like continuously around the edge of the project, so everything is protected with a pretty good overhang. But yeah, I think that is a concern. Yeah, I think that the team just liked the idea of like a cohesive project. The idea of color blocking in different buildings. Obviously you can see that used successfully in other townhome projects. I think what we thought after some study was that our site is the buildable footprint is fairly compact, so the buildings are kind of right up close to one another. So it just seemed to work a little better if it was more cohesive.
Okay, great. And then are you exploring cooling as well as heating for this project?
Yes, that will be part of the HVAC. Yeah, so there's a cooling plan. I don't think it's been fully designed yet, but yes, there will be cooling.
Okay, perfect. And then I noticed just like you have the C2 unit and I think the C1 unit, which are more of like the fat square as opposed to the tandem. Did you do any explorations around the site planning that looked at that kind of unit mix versus tandem? And can you speak to that?
Yeah, maybe I'll just pull up the site plan here. Really, I think the unit types were established by the geometry of the buildable area. So that, the long, narrow interlocked units just give us so much more functional living space. And then as the width of the site narrows as you move further south, then we looked at the shorter, wider units, which just seemed to work a little more naturally in that location. So all of it was, I think, something we were thinking about is just a functional apron on the driveway side, so people could have their garage, but also like you could park a big truck and a skidoo and whatever other sort of outdoor equipment you might have. This you kind of typically see in Squamish. So it was really sized to allow for a functional frontage, and that's why the units step at the grade level to create a more open ground space.
Okay, perfect. And then can you say more about the mobile pollinator meadow?
The pollinator mowable has been. Yeah.
But when you had the picture of the little cart there, I'm like, are you gonna move this thing around? Okay, mowable pollinator cart.
So-
You're looking like a meadow mix.
Well, the intent is to be flexible.
Right.
And so if you create a pollinator meadow, it can be mown to lawn.
Yeah.
And if you want, you can now drop a blanket in the middle, you mow to a little circle, and yeah, it's completely flexible and it can change over time.
Awesome. And are there any requirements to raise this site for FCL, or is it kind of at existing grade?
It's being modified slightly, so we're bringing the grade up so that it allows some living space at grade there. So it's not drastic, but it's being kind of adjusted upwards. Yeah.
And then I see that you've proposed some structures within the BC Hydro right of way. Has that been secured yet through BC Hydro, or does it fall under?
We're going back and forth to try and determine the materials, the exact heights, etc. We know there's a 3-meter limit.
Right.
And so it's just a matter of explaining what we're trying to do and making sure that we dial it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's all I have for questions. We'll flip it now to comments. And so I'll start in the same order. Sarah.
Thank you for the presentation. My comment on the white is that it's a whole lot of white, that there should be some consideration. to break that up a little bit. And I would encourage you to have both the front side and back side doors in the units that have those to mimic the same color that's on the front door. I think it's going to help with wayfinding. I also would encourage you to have pocket doors on those A units so that those units could at least be visitable, or if somebody breaks a leg, that they can stay within their unit while they have that temporary disability. And going along in that same vein is that make sure that you've got backing in the walls by the toilet and in the shower so that somebody could put grab bars if necessary. Yeah, that's my sort of primary comments. The other one is I'm not sure about if there was any variance with the parking, but you only actually need to have one access aisle with the accessible parking stalls. So you may be able to squeeze in another one, and just that you have the appropriate curb letdowns to your pathways at the end of those access aisles, either leading into the park or you know, where the mail facilities are, as well as into your where your garbage disposal will be. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Beth?
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, so just understanding that my mandate here is to talk about form and character primarily. And I think that most of the questions that the planning department had were with respect to the form and character, and in particular, the color, the massing, the connectivity to sort of like the Squamish vernacular. Not everybody believes there's a Squamish vernacular, but I do very steadfastly. And I think my comments really would be, I'm not too disturbed about the white. You don't see a lot of white around Squamish, but it's not something that I find particularly troubling in this case. I think paired with the large mass, maybe there could be something there that could be addressed in terms of breaking up the mass a tiny bit to articulate the building a little bit more. But I'll temper that comment because I know obviously that too much articulation will be a compromise to step 3 to the sustainability goals of the project as well. I wouldn't say that it needed to be something very drastic at all, but it would be nice to see sort of a slight articulation of the unit so it reads more as a community and less as a band of bars. And that's just really me sort of visualizing what's on the adjacent site, which is more of the single family homes. They're quite big. They do take up large swaths that kind of can look like a block, but you still feel the articulation in the community. There aren't a ton of farmhouse structures in this site as it is. So I really think that the form and character otherwise is fine. Board and batten is something that's, I think, very much a Squamish vernacular. Be great if it were cedar, but I know moving in the direction of fire smart and moving in the direction that's sort of pragmatic for building owners in Squamish, Hardy's kind of the next best thing for this here. So I think mostly, yeah, those are my comments. I think it would be nice to see it sort of a little bit more definition in the massing, break up the massing as Kim suggested earlier. And in that case, I think the combination of the bright color and the massing wouldn't read as something that's, you know, in such contrast to the adjacent housing neighborhood. I think it's to the west. That's it for me.
Awesome. Thanks. Sunny?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I think I like the modern house farm concept that is really linked and is working really well with the concept of farming and agricultural project next to the massing. I'm really echoing Kim and Sarah about the white. I think breaking up the massing would be a good opportunity, maybe in the base, as Kim was suggesting. That would be a really good idea. And that's all for me.
Thanks so much. Kim?
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun with the vernacular you're using, and I guess there wasn't a requirement to show us the vernacular, but I appreciate that. I appreciate how difficult it is for you to break up massing, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more a bay window or something, and not everywhere, but that just gives, that's my home and that's my home, instead of being in a block of homes. I know you're trying to attempt to do that with the door colors, but maybe form would help. I would certainly say a base and an upper. I mean, it's a pretty typical architectural thing. So you could do even a tone on the white, a deeper tone on the white, or be a little bit more adventurous with color and vary it from block to block, but give each base more emphasis through color. That's a cheap and easy one for you to do rather than a massing change. So I would encourage that you do that. And that's really the forming character is what we're talking about. So I think you've got some places to go. You could change your fascia and put some punch into the fascia, and that would help, I think, in reducing the sense of mass, because you've got your 2-foot overhangs, which isn't a big overhang at all, but it's an overhang. White is going to be difficult in our wet climates, and you've got big walls that are a 2-foot overhang isn't going to do anything to. But you know, that's what you've got. But I think maybe you could consider also some color in fascia. There's some white buildings in Vancouver I've seen. They have really not done well over time because of our climate. So I think you need to go, unfortunately, to a bit more muted than just straight up white if you're going to have it look good over time. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Okay, I guess it's me. So thank you for the presentation. I guess off the top, we'll just acknowledge that it's a very tough site from a development perspective, and there's some important amenities as part of the package. So kudos to you for that. I actually think it's quite successful and attractive, the building form and the board and batten in the white. You know, I think it kind of maybe plays off some projects such as Southlands by Century Group that have used that quite well. And it kind of created quite a beautiful community. I think it fits within that Finch Drive ambition of what it wants to be. I do think you may want to consider a 2-foot overhang being more, but I think there could also be components of your operations and maintenance manual and your strata plan that require cleaning the exterior a bit more. I know that we've looked at white cladding, and I think white cladding can be implemented. It just takes care. And so that just needs to be part of the consideration. I think when I think of a Squamish agricultural vernacular, cedar shake definitely comes to mind. And so I don't know if there are any opportunities. I mean, Hardy makes a beautiful shake product as well, but you may want to consider that if you're looking at switching up any kind of base materials. And then, yeah, think about the placement of those condenser units if you do go for heating and cooling. I think there's probably obvious spots like on the balconies, but it's just nice to find ways to hide those from view more than less. And then, yeah, I'd say on the square versus tandem style units, I personally believe that the square units provide a more functional living space. But that said, I think your answer was correct in that you're providing the aprons that are usable. And that's kind of where I think other projects in Squamish have gone awry, is people want to park on those even if there's not enough space for a car. And so in doing that, I think it's a difficult site, so that should be acknowledged by the planning department. So are there any other comments before we conclude this one? I guess the last piece is the one that I should probably read, which is in your report, Bryan, potential recommendation. So I'll read them out as far as a potential recommendation. A, that the advisory design panel support the project as presented and does not need to see this project returned for further review. B, that the ADP supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations, and then we'll provide those. C, that advisory design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to present the ADP, or that we do not support the project as presented. Would anyone like to move a motion of those three?
I'll move motion B.
I'll second it from Beth. All in favor? Anyone opposed? I can't see Sunny, but Sunny, I'll assume you're on board unless I hear otherwise. Okay, Bryan, do you need any clarification on the comments?
Yeah, maybe just consensus, because I heard some folks were okay with white and then others wanted to see a bit more articulation. So if you guys could just maybe make a firm recommendation on that, that would be helpful.
I'll let the architect speak first.
Kim, do you want to go first?
I still recommend that you do break it up somewhat with the base. You have that opportunity there. So either with the using the shingles, that's a great idea, the hardy shingles, or just a different color that gives you a break. You know, and you're using the board and batten vertically everywhere, and maybe the base you just you switch it up to either the shingles or plank. But I would say the base is where people are, and that's where you could give it a bit, break the mass in more of a distinct sense, rather than giving one building green, one blue, and one yellow, which isn't really a comment. But there was that comment of giving different colors to different blocks. I think the buildings need more articulation than the blocks. Does that help?
Yes, that's helpful. So I would just summarize your recommendations or what I heard to be explore using the same color of doors front and back. Use pocket door on the main level of those units that provide the ground level living space. Use the appropriate curb letdowns by the accessible stalls and elsewhere around site. And to break up the lower level or break up the massing by exploring a different color or material selection on the base of the units. Does that sound accurate?
Yep.
I think also what Carlos had said about the maintenance of the white should, if they continue with just white, that there should be some consideration of how that will be maintained over time.
Yeah, there was a discourse, I think, about maybe fine tuning the white, looking a little bit at it, seeing sort of what the impacts might be on organics, or if it just means another, like a more stringent maintenance program, or placement of your dryer vents, downspouts, things like that, so you don't end up with green spots all over the building, I suppose. So that was also looking at the actual color of white. I know that is a real architect thing to say now, because there's billions of colors of white. So looking a little bit more at the actual color of white. And I think my comment which goes along with the white color was looking at articulation, but not necessarily through use of color, but maybe like subtle articulation in the building mass. Are there ways to break the mass down without drastic articulations? Does that help?
No. Do you want to do the next one, Brian? Or do I have to throw it to you? The next project?
I will just go and double check that those applicants are here. We can take 5.
We'll take 5-minute break, everyone. Thank you.
number 627 at 38123 Cleveland Avenue. This application is proposing a mixed-use building at 38123 Cleveland. The proposed development is subject to Development Permit Area 3 Universal Guidelines and Development Permit Area 5 Commercial Center. This site is zoned CD 111. It was recently rezoned from C4 downtown commercial to this comprehensive development zone. There are no variances requested as part of this application. It is compliant with the district's draft downtown viewscape standards and this CD 111 zoning. This project hasn't previously been presented to ADP, and staff are generally supportive of the site plan and specifically request ADP recommendations on building form and character and landscaping as it pertains to DPA 3 universal guidelines and DPA 5 guidelines. And with that, I will pass it over to the proponent to present.
So hi everyone, my name's Elizabeth Chong from SLA, and I'm here with Bryce Gauthier, the principal of Gauthier and Associates Landscape Architects. So we're here today to present Cedar Peak. Stefan Leroy is the architect on the project. He's currently traveling, so due to technical issues, the District of Squamish has allowed me to present on his behalf, but he's currently joined. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Squamish nations on which this project is situated. We, the team at SLA and Gauthier and Associates, are based out of Vancouver, the territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. So Cedar Peak is located at the corner of Cleveland Avenue and Winnipeg Street, one of the main intersections in downtown Squamish. It's a well-connected area located on one of the high streets, is linked to the network of bike paths throughout town, and is surrounded by a lively array of local shops, cafes, restaurants, and scenic mountain views. Cedar Peak is a 6-story all-electric mixed-use building featuring 44 residential units and has over 35% dedicated to employment spaces. The development enhances the public realm at the intersection through thoughtful design, materials, and functionality. The proposal provides expansive office spaces and housing, as well as commercial retail units, a corner plaza, and a through-block pedestrian walkway along the ground level to activate the public realm and promote livability and workability within the neighborhood. So the design of Cedar Peak in many ways is inspired by Squamish. Its culture, history, and natural environment contribute to its reputation as a world-renowned location. So nature is the most obvious source of inspiration for this project, just with amazing views in every direction. But most importantly, from the very start of the design process, we wanted to make sure that the aspect of community was highlighted, reflecting what already exists here. And so design features such as large gathering spaces, outdoor seating along the ground level, and a corner plaza all contribute to the public realm and help to foster a sense of community by designing spaces for social interactions. So we just want to show you a bit of the design process. As you can see, we have a few setbacks on the site, which we saw as opportunities for outdoor spaces. There are amazing views in every direction, so we've used view studies and have worked with the District of Squamish to ensure we do not block any of these critical views. Here with this simplified massing, you can clearly see how we've broken down our program. So commercial retail units line the perimeter of Cleveland and Winnipeg, activating the street and corner. Level 3 is set back and provides a large outdoor amenity terrace, and the upper floors, the office and residential portions, have 11-foot floor-to-floor heights, providing expansive office spaces and also high ceilings for each residential unit. And here we have a more detailed diagram highlighting the different and unique identities seen throughout the project, and it's also where you can see some of our inspiration come through. So as I previously mentioned, we have a large amenity terrace on the 3rd level that allows us to keep this human-scaled 2-story street wall seen along Cleveland Avenue. And so within that 2 stories, we've split the facade into different identities to break up the width of the block and create human-scaled storefronts that wrap around the corner. And the residential portion is designed as a textile with an orthogonal rhythmic pattern, deep balconies, and pops of color. And lastly, the office portion is designed as a terrain of sunshades So here in this diagram, you can see large windows facing Cleveland and the surrounding views, and also with vertical perforated sunshades that block potential direct sunlight into the workspace and also add some depth and texture to the exterior. This final massing highlights the outdoor space created from the building setbacks along both Cleveland and Winnipeg, the corner plaza, and the through block pathway, which all contribute to the public realm. And then on the upper floors, the open space is created by the private residential balconies, the private terrace on level 5, and also the amenity space. And so now I'll pass this along to Bryce to speak about the public realm on the ground level, including the corner plaza, the walkway, and then also the terrace.
Everyone, so just picking up on some of those big themes that Elizabeth mentioned in her intro and her description of the massing, focusing on this corner plaza, which does take off on the supplied public realm guidelines from Squamish. We were really able to make that area a focal point. We took some of we very carefully actually laid down those public realm designed and then added some of our own pieces to it and really tried to make the two feel like a seamless outdoor plaza, irrespective of the property lines. And how we did that was going back to those ideas of the view corridor, the natural landscape. And for us, we took the river as our main point of inspiration. And so you can see this blue band of the river, this riparian band of blue that goes through our side of the property, and even is suggested as a layer over top of the urban guidelines that it may, perhaps pending city approval, extend out into the public realm. And we have the public realm plans ask for planting on all the corners, and so you can see at that main corner intersection you're surrounded by nature. So we have benches and a couple of trees, mindful of the traffic views, but these little islands of planting, we have rock and stone mimicking the views that you would see from the mountains. And then you have this sort of metaphorical stream idea, which would be inlaid mosaic tile or some sort of pigment in the concrete that would carry through onto our side of the property. And then you have in the center of this plaza more planting. So you really are, while you're at a busy street corner, there's this feeling of still this sense of place that carries from that public street corner into the semi-public of our building, and also goes right up in some locations right to the edge of the building, and really starts to make a nice place for these shops. And I think the shops are the next element that's really important to the vitality of the streetscape of this building. And if you see, we'll see shortly in some of the sections, the level of thought and detail that's gone into the facade and maintaining that classic two-story architectural form, and how those details of shop windows and little entries come into the project, and then how they inform the landscape. So you can see in our paving, we have like little planters, little seating tables, the idea of the wave of the river goes into some of the alcoves where the CRU entries would be. And then carrying around to the property edge, you see we have this narrow mid-block connection, kind of little alley space, but we've sculpted that out with some screening devices from the neighbors and set enough space for bike racks and seating, and really trying to create this cool little alley spot that I think is really going to be successful with amenity and commercial spaces all around it. And then moving back up to the north, well, it's not north, is a bit askew, but up towards Winnipeg Street, that's where we have the main entry into the building. We have the rhythm of bike racks, some more seating for the commercial retail units. We've still managed to weave in the public realm design and our design, and we purposefully wanted it to be concrete over slab because we felt in doing that with it'll meld really nicely with the public realm. Like a lot of times we sort of fight with the public realm, and in this case I think we're merging with it, but also bringing something to the table. We're not just copying it and extending it onto the building site. We have street trees as well, which you can see some very small ones that fit around the overhangs, and then some larger ones on both Cleveland and Winnipeg. So moving to the next slide. Here you can see how that arrangement of open spaces works in the plaza, how some of our materials will work. We're thinking of mortared stone or mortared or river rock. Those details still need to be refined, but they would not be a loose material because obviously there's a lot of traffic in this space. And then we have the public open realm of the stone diagram is from Squamish, and we feel like that really fits with what we want to do. And then we have these berms, these, we'll place some large basalt columns, and that will create a little bit more height that we can get trees and benches and planting around it. So it really feels like a nice tucked in space with a bit of a breather from the traffic, lots of seating. Obviously this will have to be really drought tolerant, really shade tolerant kind of planting because there are some overhangs to consider. And moving to the next slide. You see the privacy screen I mentioned along the property line. There's a lot of opportunity here, whether it's public art, expression of First Nations art, or just simply a really simple core 10 and wood screen. There's a verticality to the design because it is a narrow space, and just enough room to let passersby go through, to have a small, intimate couple of patio tables and bike racks. Moving to the next slide. Here we're up on that main amenity level. We're facing roughly south and west, and there's incredible views, as Elizabeth mentioned. And so we really wanted to make this space feel active. On one side, you have a simpler space for a commercial user, or an office user. On the other side, you'll see we've got the small the individual patios. So we have some privacy planting to separate them, and then all at the front of the building, there's a landscape buffer between the office and the amenity space. But then when you start the amenity space, there's a playground, and then there is these separate eating gathering rooms that could allow multiple groups to sit and just take in the incredible view, eating small planters for herbs and outdoor dining, and all under a semi-covered space. Some nice furnishing that we worked with the client to develop. So there's some break from the winds and different climate that you'll experience on those upper levels. And that's probably enough for that slide. I think that might be, and just some general more sections of different views. I will leave my comments now for any questions afterwards, if people have any. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bryce. So moving on to the pedestrian circulation on site. I just want to highlight and maybe reiterate the pedestrian entrance, which is off of Cleveland and away from the corner. We also want to show these gently recessed commercial storefront entrances that help to mimic the current streetscape and character of downtown Squamish, which is lined with unique and small, narrow width stores, and also creates little moments along the street that break up the typical flat curtain wall that you see in new construction. And also on this page, I'd like to highlight just some of the setbacks. So again, as Bryce mentioned, setbacks along Cleveland and Winnipeg to provide outdoor seating. And then we've also widened the mid-block pathway near the street to allow this corner retail to spill out with seating and patio space right off of Cleveland. this would be visible from the corner commercial retail unit where there is still overlook and where we're using that eyes on the street concept. And then so all vehicle circulation is out of sight from the pedestrians, all accessed off of the laneway. So we have the parking off of the laneway here, and then a little further down we have the level 1 parking entrance, and then a little bit more further we have the level 2 parking ramp entrance. Accessibility is something that is also very important in this design. So the entire outdoor area on the site is gently graded with clear signage and is well illuminated, and also has barrier-free storefronts and a main entry. And we've also located the accessible parking stalls all on level 1 in the covered parking garage, close to the parking entrance and close to the shared elevators. Moving up to level 2, where we can see the rest of the parking. Just wanted to mention that all parking on level 1 and 2, as well as 30% of the bike parking, will have access to EV charging. On level 2, you can also see the bike rooms. This is around half of them, and we also have 1 bike parking stall in each residential unit. You can also see a large office space off of Cleveland, and then on level 2 we also have 6 affordable rental units, and this includes a 3-bed unit, 2 2-bed units, and 3 1-bed units. This is a typical plan. You'll also notice that the elevator lobby is split from level 3 and up, providing a clear separation between the office and residential uses. We see that large setback, office setback here, 9 meters, and a 12-meter setback for the residential portion. Also on level 3, we have 50 storage lockers. We have premium units with private terraces, an indoor amenity space, as well as that large accessible amenity terrace. This is a typical 2-bed plus den unit that complies with the BCBC adaptability requirements. So currently we're working on our units and trying to see how many we can meet, these requirements. So as you can see here, with these requirements, 1 washroom and 1 bedroom need to comply. And you see that with the blue here, the clear space between on either side of the door, sorry. And then the washroom has a few extra requirements, such as clear floor space in front of the sink and within the washroom, and then future accommodation of grab bars. So the variety of materials used throughout the project have a lot to do with creating the different identities, which also helps to form the overall character of the development. And so as mentioned previously, the colors as well as the different textures and depths in the facade are inspired by the surrounding environment, reminiscent of the features seen throughout the landscape. And so on the ground level near the entrance and storefronts, we're using a small portion of brick, as it's tactile, very familial, warm, and has a welcoming feeling, especially around the entrance. And it's also seen throughout the existing streetscape of downtown Squamish. And so the storefronts, we're using a timeless darker green color that will attract the public. We also have a band of wood that line the affordable units and wrap around Winnipeg, with also a decorative wood columns providing the units behind with a little bit of privacy. For the office, we're using a bold and inspiring terracotta color metal panel with matching perforated screens. And then lastly, the residential portion, which is seen on the top left of the render, we're using a neutral tone to balance out the colors of the office and storefronts and to also blend in with the background, ensuring that we're not drawing focus away from the mountains beyond. And so in this area, we're choosing to add color is we're choosing to add a lighter, more subdued green on the railings and on the inset balcony walls, which also tie in with the storefronts below. So here's a close-up of the commercial storefront design. We have large windows and also for logo placement and advertisement. We have a canopy and lighting, which also provides opportunities for a table and chair or just a place to stop and chat. And We have signage projecting from the building, something a little bit different, visually appealing and at eye level. And on the left side, we have the gently recessed entrance. It's just recessed enough just so when it's in the open position, it's not blocking any incoming pedestrian traffic. So the elevations here, you can see how we've broken up the block. We can also see how the storefronts and the wood band continuously wrap around the side. And we can also see the level 5 setback off of Winnipeg Street. And then on the upper elevation, we see that large office and residential setback from Cleveland Avenue. On these elevations here, which is the mid-block pathway and the laneway on the bottom, we see that same pattern that Bryce was describing in the landscape design now flowing from the ground plane and onto the building, wrapping around the corner. So as we mentioned previously, we've been studying the current streetscapes that surround this development. So this drawing in particular here shows a partial Cleveland streetscape with our proposal, just emphasizing how we've retained that human scaled 2-story commercial street wall along Cleveland. Next is a small portion of our material study, highlighting some common materials used in our proposal and in the surrounding context, showing how we've taken inspiration from what's already here. So in summary, Cedar Peak is an all-electric building meeting a GHGI of 1, and this includes the residential, office, and retail spaces. The design provides a corner plaza, a widened 3-block pathway, and opportunities for seating and gathering spaces at the ground level. All vehicle parking and 30% of bike stalls have access to EV charging. There is 44 residential units, 6 of them being affordable. We have 35% employment space with large expansive windows and ceilings. And we've also provided a large outdoor amenity space for the building users. Thank you. I'd like to open the floor to any questions or comments.
Thank you. Bryan, anything to add? Nope. Okay, we'll just crack on. So a reminder, we'll do questions first and then we'll go to comments. To keep it simple, I'll do the same order. So Sarah, how about you start us off?
Great, thanks for the presentation. I don't know if this is a question to you or a question to the district. Can you just tell me how many parking spaces the current parking lot at that area contains?
We're currently providing 51 parking stalls, and we have a few cash in lieu.
Yeah, no, I was curious about the parking that exists there now. I'm just thinking about the loss of parking. That's fine. Can you tell me why these units won't have to comply to be 100% adaptable?
Just with the current building code, there is no requirement for a certain number of units that need to be adaptable, but we're trying our best to see how many we can comply.
Okay, my understanding was that it was March of 2025 that they would need to. So whether, I guess, if you get your building permitted before that. Have you considered how the sodded lawn is going to be maintained when it's going to be a dog relief area that's outside the front doors?
It likely won't be sodded. It will most likely be a artificial turf. We have done these on roof decks, and they generally require artificial turf and with special routing to mechanical with sand underneath and a hose bib nearby for washing.
And is that then going to that type of artificial turf going to be used in these small pockets of grass that are like in the area that's between the buildings at the northish side along like in the walkway between buildings, or is that going to be?
I wouldn't expect grass there. Those would be plants.
Okay. And what's the surfacing in the children's play area?
At this point possibly to be determined based on a variety of design factors, but most likely poured in place in order for us to get the berms and shapes, and it's the most resilient and weight effective when we're dealing with a wood frame or slab construction.
Okay, and where's the terrazzo flooring being proposed?
I'm not sure I remember where terrazzo flooring
Oh, I believe
was
that
on
was
drawings.
the Blue River on the
Oh,
public.
Thank you. So there's a variety of different ways we achieve the blue pebble. More of a technical issue. For want of a better term, it would be a mortar or possibly an epoxy resin, but it could be terrazzo as well. There's several different ways to achieve that, but it would be a fixed bright blue element of some kind that would be flush and beautiful, but
Right.
not flexible or loose. If that makes sense.
Right. No, I wasn't anticipating that. I'm just wondering if there's been consideration of how that's going to the different texture for somebody who's using an eye, excuse
Yes.
me, a cane when they have a visual impairment.
There would definitely be a textural difference, whether that's in how the finish, but that will go down through the whole process of detailed design to determine exactly what that is, and obviously like cost and a bunch of other elements will play into that. Also headroom that's remaining between the top of the slab and the remaining space, but I would expect there would be very minimal. I mean, it has to be ADA compliant, right? So there would be it would be no different than the gap between a paver or a paving stone.
Right. ADA doesn't really apply though in Canada, right? That's the American
Understood, but
Disabilities
that's
Act.
still what we use as a base
Okay.
or better.
Where are the blueberries being proposed?
The blueberries, I believe, are proposed on the roof decks, and that's generally to provide a range of planting that is both appropriate to First Nations, but also a lot of food policy work is done around providing planting that is edible as well.
Sure. And then is there brick being proposed for the edge of the sidewalk like the rendering shows?
Not sure
The
which
edge of the
thanks.
sidewalk, sorry?
Yeah, there's in one of the renderings, there's it shows, I think it's supposed to be outside the main entrance off Cleveland. It looks like there's brick that's being proposed on the street side of the concrete sidewalk. And I just wondered whether or not that was in there for the look of it or if is actually
That's
part
just a
of.
place where we're not designing the streetscape. That's already been designed, so
Okay.
that's just a placeholder.
Great. Okay, thanks. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Beth?
Hi, yeah. First question, also landscape question, just out of curiosity, just might inform some comments later. The water installation that you were just discussing, the differentiated colored strip in the public realm area, was there ever any studies undertaken to see as to whether that could be a real water feature? Just out of curiosity.
Because it's over a slab, it would probably be challenging to do. And I'm not sure about the stormwater requirements for that. I think they're probably, given how tight the space is and how much many crossings there are, it would be challenging to do it and still pull off the design because it is a very small site with a lot of different crisscrossing. So you'd end up be creating a barrier to crossing the site, I think.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily something that wasn't allowed by the district. And I think the other question I have is, are there any images or drawings that show the building with its finishes and its various color palette in the surrounding context with the contextual color and material palette showing as well at the same time?
Like a rendering and overview with the current streetscape. We don't currently have
or
that.
pictures of the existing. Okay.
No, just that one slide calling out the materials. But that's just a drawing.
Okay. And just so I'm clear from your presentation, the inspiration for the color palette is sort of drawn from the natural surrounding landscape. And the materiality was, there was a study into surrounding context for materiality. Is that sort of the gist? Okay. Yeah, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Sunny, any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. How is it divided, like the outdoor amenity space, the office outdoor amenity space with the residential amenity space?
So as you see on probably the first or second plan we showed, there is a large landscape area. It's quite wide, and we'll probably do some raised berms over voiding. So it's nothing more complex than simply just putting some voiding down, which allows us to keep the soil depths and weight under control, but also achieve some sort of vertical element. We didn't want to have a lot of fences, and fences aren't really that private anyway, so we wanted to have a good landscape buffer between.
Thank you.
Okay, if that's all, we'll go to Kim.
I didn't have many questions. Just a kind of curiosity on in the laneway with the stream coming up over the building. What's the material that's going to be? The blue. What is the blue on that walls?
That will be painted. So something that it will be a stucco or concrete finish that's just painted on.
Okay. And question is, being an all-electric building, have you considered solar panels on the roof? You've got a big roof area there.
Yeah, it's definitely being considered. We're currently working with our consultants on that design, not currently finished, so we're open to exploring that.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Elizabeth, can you talk about the challenges in integrating office and residential into the same building?
For sure. We definitely want to make sure that there is a level of privacy between the two. Originally, we didn't have one elevator dedicated to office and residential, and they were shared. Again, keeping this community aspect in mind. But we just thought for a security and a level of privacy measure, we decided to separate them, and then that's why on level 3 and up we have that wall that really does separate them. There's just a level of privacy. I feel like if you're living in a unit, or if you're going to office, you might not want to share an elevator with someone who's in their pajamas coming down the elevator, just doing a grocery run or something like that. So that definitely was a challenge that we took into consideration, and we had a few iterations going back and forth, but ultimately we led to this decision.
Okay, great. And am I correct in saying that the L5 balcony is not public, private?
Yes, that's private.
And that would just be for the units adjacent to it?
Exactly.
Okay. And did Public Works agree to having pavers in the parking area on Cleveland? Or the district generally? No. No, so that's like a placeholder at the moment?
Yes, likely.
And Brian's, yeah.
Yes, likely.
Okay. And has there been any formal consultation with Squamish Nation on this project?
No.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had for questions. So we'll flip into comments. Same order, Sarah, you're first.
Okay, again, thanks for the presentation. Can you just clarify, I forgot to ask, the rear parking, the parking that's in the laneway at the back of the building, is that going to be residential or commercial?
So we haven't yet decided which parking stalls are for commercial or residential yet.
Okay, and is there an overhang over those parking spaces?
There's a small overhang, but not for the entire length of the stall.
Okay.
There's a building setback, so we can't do that?
So as a person with a large overheight van, I would like to encourage you to have a dedicated accessible parking space on one of those parking spaces. Maybe you can put it adjacent to the existing access aisle that leads to the door, just because an overhead van clearly won't go into your covered underground, well, above ground parking. This is more of a comment to the District of Squamish that you might want to consider adding an accessible spot along Cleveland or Winnipeg to the parallel parking in an area that's going to have hard surfacing versus the artificial turf. I would also consider in those units, I mean, I would try and encourage you to do all of the units to be adaptable. I actually think that there should be a percentage that's accessible, ready to go, but that's not a mandate yet, so can't make that happen. But I would encourage you to think about having a washroom off of the master bedroom be adaptable, just from a functional standpoint. And then also with the water feature that you're going to have into the sidewalk is to either use like a really smooth terrazzo or resin so that there will be a textural change, but it's not going to be kind of a tripping hazard or something that's sort of significantly different in the feel that would be similar to a tactile pad. And then again, just to the district, ensure that you've got at your crosswalks some tactile warning indicators. That's all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Beth?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think first I want to say that it's nice to see a generous public realm kind of consideration given at this corner. It's a corner where there's always food trucks parked, and it definitely has a lot of sort of potential to be a bit of a hub corner if it's treated delicately, which is, it's nice to see there's some generosity there. Also, I appreciate sort of the lower level street wall that you talk about along Cleveland with the setback for the spaces above. It's nice to have that as well so that it's not so imposing in that area. The one thing I would say is that I'm finding it really tough to visualize the building in its context and to kind of get that connection of the form, the massing, the color, and its connection to Squamish and sort of the unique character of Squamish. I feel like there are some drawings and images that may be missing from the presentation that might help support that argument. Because even just sort of looking at the image on the front cover of the application package, there's a real standout between the color on the building and the colors of the landscape palette. They're quite different from one another. And I'm trying to link the narrative of the natural surrounding landscape with the colors on the buildings and to see how they tie in with the downtown versus stand out, you know, how they speak to the landscape, the natural landscape, the views of the Chief, you know, the Tantalus Way and the beyond and sort of the mountains on the other side. Or do they stand out from it? Do they speak to it? Do they stand out from it? Do they speak to the surrounding context of buildings and the sort of the history of building along Cleveland, which is the High Street? Or does it stand out from it? And will it stand the test of time? So I think really, I can't really comment on it because I need more information to be able to say. Just from looking at it, it just appears to be very standalone to me right now. That's my reading of it. I think it's quite hard to compete with the natural landscape and putting in materials that kind of mimic the natural landscape, like mimic the water, mimic the wood, but are really metal and are really stone, especially since, you know, we're so close to the natural aspects of the community. So I think it's a tough thing to do well. And I think I would just need to see more of a convincing argument for the way that the building sits in its context. That's it. That's form and character commentary for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Sunny?
Well, thank you for the presentation. I think this is going to be an important building, considering that, you know, like it's now is like as Beth said, is a completely empty lot and a lot of food trucks around. So this is going to be very key for that corner in downtown Squamish. And I think the building is properly oriented in both streets, Cleveland and Winnipeg. I really like all the opportunities it's creating at the street level, you know, the public interactions, and also in places in the amenity outdoor places too. Yeah, overall, yeah, I think it's a positive project. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, I reiterate, thank you for the presentation. I think it's a fairly sophisticated building. I like the way it steps back from Cleveland and from Winnipeg. I think those are good points. You've really considered, I think, the vibrancy of the street with the both your public realm and your storefronts, and the mix of materials. I think I like the mix of materials as well. So really, I think it's quite a good project. I think you could consider the solar, or at least being ready for solar being adapted to it. I'm not sure how the ownership would work with that, but there's certainly an opportunity there to use solar on the roof. Yeah, so generally I think it's quite good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So thank you for the presentation. I'll start off the top. Just within the presentation and the package, I think there are a number of mentions of First Nations art, and I do think it's like really the right approach to development. But if you do it, you should do it the right way, and the right way means going through formal processes. And to do so, I think you need to start that process now, because these things take a lot of time to be meaningful and to be done correctly. I'll get on a soapbox here for a second. I think this building kind of exemplifies the challenges with redevelopment on Cleveland Avenue in a big way. This is a really impressive building, high quality materials, a lot of thought put into the building and the landscape. But I think that this will be an incredibly challenging building to actually bring to market. You know, I realize this is a CD, it's its own CD zone, but I think it reflects a lot of the criteria of the C4 zone. And I think this project and its complexities kind of show why we need to look at the C4 zone again. Having office and residential together is a challenge. I think this project's done a really good job of it by separating vertically the office and the residential instead of kind of having a crummy 8-foot ceiling on a second floor. But it makes projects really, really difficult to bring to market. And especially with this project having the affordable rental component, I think it probably deserves to be 100% residential application given the high quality of materials being proposed. But that's not where we are, but I'll take that as a point for consideration in future C4 work. And so I think I'm generally supportive of the building. I think the team has done a really good job in its design. And then I will highlight that should this building move forward into a reality, it will probably trigger a bit of a parking crisis within our downtown, because this lot and the adjacent lot are pretty critical short-term parking spaces, and they don't really have a cost associated with them, and maybe that's a problem. But it just needs to be considered as part of the overall plan for Squamish. So my summary on the building itself is that it's a really great job. So are there any other comments? I don't see any there, so I will read out our potential recommendations. So fully support the project, no need to return, support the project with some comments, and doesn't need to return to us. C, that we support the project and it does need to return to us, or D, that the panel does not support the project. Would anyone like to move a motion regarding that? Just as up for discussion, I think it's a project of a quality that I would actually probably propose moving an A, but I know that there were a couple fairly important items, especially I think from Sarah, that might need to be worked with to resolve with staff. So it would be like a light B if I was to propose something.
Maybe I'll let you speak, Sarah. I would be more inclined to support a B personally.
Yeah, I could support a B. But I do want the district to work hard to try and have some more adaptable and, accessible units, frankly, because I've spent the last 2 months in hospital and it's all seniors who are dealing with built environment problems and care issue problems, but the built environment is something that we can impact and influence here. So I think it's a consideration that really needs to be addressed sooner than later.
Okay, so shall we, would someone like to move B with those comments? Beth, seconder. All in favor? Sarah's a seconder.
Can I add some comments or?
Definitely.
Yeah.
If we're accepting of that, then any additional comments?
Oh, my mic was still on. So bad at that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I would just add the comment that it would be nice to see the applicants submit some more, I guess, graphic representations of the building within its context to the district, just to make sure that the planning department feels like the proposal is successful in sort of meeting those goals of having the materiality, the finish, the look kind of tie in with the surrounding element and be reflective of Squamish design culture.
Anything else from the group? No? Okay, so that concludes that portion, Carly. I think so. Okay, awesome. And then if I go back to my agenda, I have roundtable discussion. Would any, so presenters.
Yeah, I mean, I think just going off of what Beth had talked about context photos, I think it would be really nice with our packages to have some better context photos, period, full stop. That it's, within the neighborhoods that we are understanding the buildings that are beside them in their real form, in their real look, and not just as a block beside them. I think that helps to provide a better idea of whether or not these buildings are going to fit in and and not hope that, oh, the building next door will change, within some time period. I think that it's important to understand where it's going and is it going to fit. So can we add that to our packages, please?
I'm looking at Jesse. We will ask.
It's an interesting point. Kim mentioned it in the first presentation as well.
Okay. Any other items for discussion?
I've been on quite a few design panels, and typically we do get context, street context for understanding. It's good to go and see the actual projects, but during the presentation to have that to refer to is really helpful. And particularly when a lot of it, the design is referring to the context, but then we're not seeing anything. So I think the streetscapes would be really good as added to the presentations.
Yeah, and I guess there's always the challenge, just to come at it from the other side of the table, of the 10-minute requirement to provide all the information to us versus that information. So I think it might be something as simple as like a Google Earth link as part of the council report, as much as that's additional burden for staff, but just so you could click that and then get an idea of the street view, because I think street view exists for almost all the stuff within Squamish. But yeah, it would definitely help to have the proponent show that as well. I know that can be challenging.
Yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily need to speak to it within their presentation, as long as it's within the package for us to look at. I think that's the valuable piece.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to terminate. Any seconders?
Sure, I'll second it.
Awesome. Okay. All in favor? We all are. Have a wonderful weekend and try to stay dry.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you.
You too.
You as well, Kim.